Hollywood's biggest stars weren't just acting on screen, they were putting on performances in their private lives that would make their movies look like amateur theater. Behind those perfect smiles and glamorous premieres lurked family secrets so explosive they could have destroyed careers overnight. For decades, publicists, studios, and the stars themselves worked overtime burying skeletons that would have shocked even the most jaded fans. These weren't just celebrity scandals. These were deeply personal tragedies, betrayals, and shame that shaped the lives of icons you thought you knew. Today, we're ripping the lid off Hollywood's most carefully guarded family secrets. From hidden children to enemy parents, drug experiments to asylum commitments, these are the true stories that would have ended careers if they'd leaked during the golden age. Get ready. Once you know what really happened behind those mansion doors, you'll never see these beloved stars the same way again.
Well, the first time I knew who my father was, I was 23, and I was 2 weeks away from being married. And I said to my fiancé, I can't marry you. I don't know who I am.
1. Loretta Young hid a secret daughter with Clark Gable. In 1935, America's sweetheart Loretta Young had a problem growing inside her that couldn't be fixed with publicity photos or careful lighting. While filming Call of the Wild in the Washington wilderness, Young had fallen into bed with her married co-star Clark Gable. Now she was pregnant with his child, a catastrophe for a Catholic actress whose wholesome image was her meal ticket. This wasn't just another Hollywood scandal. For a 1930s Catholic actress, unmarried motherhood wasn't just frowned upon, it was career suicide. MGM panicked. Young's management team went into crisis mode. Gable, already married, kept his distance. Someone had to solve this problem, and fast. Young's solution? A cover-up so elaborate it would make Pentagon officials blush. First, she vanished from public view, claiming exhaustion, that classic Hollywood code for everything from addiction to mental breakdowns. In private, she secretly gave birth to a daughter in November 1935. But here's where Young's scheme gets truly audacious. Several months after giving birth, she contacted a Catholic orphanage and, wait for it, arranged to adopt her own biological daughter. She even timed a very public first meeting with photographers coincidentally present to document the touching moment she first laid eyes on the child she had actually birthed months earlier. For years, Young maintained this fiction, raising her biological child as adopted. The deception ran deep. She even told young Judy that her unusually large ears, a Gable family trademark, came from her unknown father. The poor girl had no idea she was calling her actual mother mother every day. The truth stayed buried until Judy was 31, when she spotted an article in a gossip magazine noting her striking resemblance to Clark Gable. Confronting Young, she finally learned the truth. Though publicly, Young maintained the adoption fiction until her death. It wasn't until 2015, years after Young passed away, that her daughter-in-law finally confirmed what Hollywood insiders had whispered for decades. Loretta Young had pulled off one of the most elaborate family deceptions in Hollywood history, all to protect a career that would have been destroyed by the truth. The secret shaped Young's entire existence: constant fear of exposure, elaborate lies to her own child, and a lifetime pretending that her flesh and blood was a charitable act rather than maternal obligation, all because the movies demanded an impossible purity that no human being could actually maintain.
Let's see now, we've been on the air 29 years and 6 months, and we got about 3.5 months to go, and we finally got you here.
Well...
2. Elizabeth Taylor's secret half-brother was erased from history. Those famous violet eyes might have been the most photographed in Hollywood history, but there was one family member Elizabeth Taylor was never pictured with, a half-brother whose existence was so thoroughly scrubbed from the Taylor family narrative that he practically became a ghost while still alive. Before Elizabeth dazzled the world, before her 8 marriages and countless headlines, her mother Sarah had a scandalous secret, a son born out of wedlock from a previous relationship. In the pearl-clutching 1930s, this kind of indiscretion could sink not just reputations, but entire family fortunes. When Sarah married art dealer Francis Taylor, they made a brutal calculation. The inconvenient child would be sent away, handed off to relatives, and later supported through hidden financial channels. The new Taylor family would start fresh, unburdened by Sarah's mistake. When Elizabeth was born in 1932, she grew up thinking Howard was her only brother, completely unaware of her exiled half-sibling. Throughout Elizabeth's meteoric rise to fame, through National Velvet, Cleopatra, all 8 wedding ceremonies, Money flowed regularly to support the banished child, but always through untraceable channels, always with strict silence enforced. While Elizabeth became one of the most visible women on the planet, her half-brother lived in obscurity, watching his sister's fame explode from the shadows, unable to publicly claim their connection. The painful irony? As Elizabeth Taylor became known for her AIDS activism and humanitarian work, as she spoke passionately about compassion and family values, this flesh and blood relative remained hidden away like a shameful secret, paid for silence while his sister's face appeared on magazine covers across the globe. The family's determination to bury this secret was so complete that even today, documentation remains scarce. It's as though they didn't just hide this person, they tried to erase him completely from history, creating a hole in the Taylor family tree where a branch should have grown. For all her diamonds and glamour, Elizabeth Taylor's family carried a secret that no jewelry vault could secure. A living, breathing person denied his rightful place in one of Hollywood's most celebrated families.
In the movies, I never dreamed that I'd be sitting here with you, drinking champagne and talking French.
Third, Lucille Ball's grandchild was secretly given up for adoption. America's favorite redhead made the world laugh with her perfect timing and rubber-faced comedy. But behind Lucille Ball's slapstick genius was a family situation that was no laughing matter. The woman who portrayed the perfect, if zany, American housewife on I Love Lucy maintained iron-fisted control over her actual family's image. So when her daughter Lucy Arnaz faced an unplanned pregnancy at a young age, the woman who built her empire on family comedy made a decision that was deadly serious. This baby would disappear. The pregnancy couldn't have come at a worse time. Lucille Ball was still a powerful figure in entertainment, carefully managing her legacy and public perception. A grandchild born under inappropriate circumstances threatened the wholesome Ball-Arnaz dynasty she'd spent decades building. The solution was swift and final: adoption, with a level of secrecy that went far beyond normal discretion. Unlike most family adoptions that eventually become acknowledged, this child was placed with such ironclad confidentiality agreements that their existence remained completely hidden. No family acknowledgement, no birthday cards, no inheritance rights. The child grew up never knowing they were just 1 degree of separation from television royalty. The secret might have stayed buried forever if not for that pesky thing called legal paperwork. Years later, probate records filed after deaths in the Ball family contained mysterious references that didn't match the publicly known family structure. These dry legal documents hinted at something the family never acknowledged: the existence of this adopted grandchild. The most heart-wrenching aspect? Lucille Ball built her entire career portraying maternal warmth and family comedy, yet helped orchestrate the permanent separation of her own grandchild from the family. The woman who made millions laugh with her fictional family kept her real family tree pruned to maintain appearances. The Ball-Arnaz family has maintained absolute silence about these revelations, refusing to comment even decades later. This continued silence only deepens the mystery and the tragedy of a child disconnected from their famous heritage for appearance's sake. She made America laugh while keeping one child a secret. In the home of television's most famous family, real life operated with a ruthlessness that would never have made it past the network censors. 4. Judy Garland's mother gave her pep pills at age 10. When Judy Garland skipped down the yellow brick road, she was already trapped in a pharmaceutical nightmare that makes the poppy field scene look like a wellness retreat. The tragic truth? That magnificent voice and seemingly boundless energy came from a chemical cocktail forced on her by the one person who should have protected her most: her mother. By age 10, Judy was the family meal ticket, performing in vaudeville and catching Hollywood's attention. But her mother, Ethel Gum, noticed something that threatened their gravy train. Judy was developing a normal adolescent body. The horror. A healthy, natural-looking child was apparently unacceptable in the entertainment business. What happened next ranks among Hollywood's most disturbing cases of child abuse. Ethel began feeding young Judy pep pills to suppress her appetite and keep her energized through punishing performance schedules. Let's be crystal clear. These weren't vitamins. They were amphetamines, highly addictive stimulants that rewired Judy's developing brain and set the stage for a lifetime of dependency. MGM executives didn't just look the other way, they enthusiastically joined the program. The studio had invested heavily in Garland, and they needed her thin, wired, and compliant. Studio doctors a term that deserves all the air quotes, began prescribing uppers for morning and downers for night, creating a cycle of chemical dependency that would haunt her entire life. By 16, when filming The Wizard of Oz, Judy was already a full-blown addict, through no choice of her own. Studio bosses limited her to chicken soup and coffee while monitoring her weight like prison guards. Even water was restricted before filming for fear of bloating. This wasn't dieting, it was sanctioned starvation combined with institutional drugging of a minor. The most heartbreaking part? Judy never stood a chance. Her mother didn't protect her from Hollywood's machine. She fed her daughter into the gears, prepackaged with an addiction that made her easier to control and exploit. While other children played, Judy was being systematically transformed into a profitable commodity with a chemical dependency that would eventually kill her. In later years, as Judy cycled through failed marriages, financial disasters, and increasingly desperate attempts to kick her dependency, few connected these adult struggles to the monstrous child abuse that created them. Her mother had conducted a medical experiment on her own child, prioritizing Judy's earning potential over her health, happiness, or even her survival. Judy Garland died at 47 from an accidental barbiturate overdose, the final inevitable chapter in a story that began with a mother who saw her daughter not as a child to cherish, but as a financial asset to maximize. The yellow brick road led not to Oz, but to an early grave.
You've been seeing my daughter. That's what I've come in here to tell you. I won't have you coming near my daughter.
You don't have to get hysterical about it. What do I care about your daughter? I'm sick of hearing about her.
You won't have to hear about her.
5. Joan Crawford's daughter said she was beaten with wire hangers. No wire hangers ever became Hollywood's most chilling catchphrase after Christina Crawford published Mommy Dearest in 1978. Behind that famous line wasn't just a demand for closet aesthetics. It was a window into the terror Christina claimed she endured growing up as Joan Crawford's adopted daughter. The public knew Joan Crawford as the epitome of Hollywood glamour, a rags-to-riches story of a woman who clawed her way from poverty to become one of the industry's most enduring stars. Crawford was also known for her supposedly devoted motherhood, frequently photographed in carefully staged domestic tableaux with her 4 adopted children for fan magazines. According to Christina, the cameras captured an elaborate fiction. Once the photographers left and the doors closed, Joan allegedly transformed into something out of a horror film. Christina described nightmarish abuse, being beaten with wire hangers for using them in her closet, nearly choked during violent hair-washing sessions, forced to eat raw meat when ill, and subjected to pre-dawn bathroom cleaning sessions with harsh chemicals if Joan found a single water spot. Perhaps most disturbing was the calculated precision Christina described. Joan reportedly maintained a sweet, loving public persona when witnesses were present. But alone with her children, Christina claimed, Crawford became meticulous in her cruelty, seeming to derive pleasure from the power she wielded over her adopted daughter. When Mommy Dearest appeared shortly after Crawford's death, Hollywood fractured into camps. Crawford's friends called Christina's account bitter fiction, motivated by being largely cut from her mother's will. They pointed to Crawford's other adopted children, who denied experiencing similar abuse. Yet others in the industry whispered they'd long suspected something was deeply wrong behind those mansion walls. Makeup artists had noticed unexplained bruises. Neighbors had heard screaming. The most chilling possibility is that Crawford, herself a survivor of poverty and reported childhood abuse, simply continued the cycle with her own children. The perfect movie star image had to be maintained at all costs, even if it meant adopting children partly for publicity and then abusing them privately when they failed to meet impossible standards. The image was glam. The house was hell. Few stars embodied such a stark disconnect between public persona and private reality as Joan Crawford, a woman who reportedly couldn't tolerate a wire hanger in her closet, but thought nothing of using one as a weapon against her own child.
I was a good listener, Lou. I could always take advice and try and follow the advice of people who had good records of success, who had done well.
6. Bing Crosby's sons claimed he beat them. That smooth, velvet voice singing White Christmas brought comfort to millions during wartime. That easy charm and twinkling eyes made Bing Crosby seem like America's ideal father. But according to his eldest son Gary, behind that soothing voice lurked a monster who terrorized his children with methodical, calculated cruelty. In 1983, Gary Crosby detonated a bombshell memoir, Going My Own Way, that shattered his father's carefully crafted image. According to Gary, America's beloved crooner regularly subjected his 4 sons from his first marriage to vicious physical beatings, emotional torture, and a disciplinary regime that crossed far beyond strictness into sadism. Gary claimed that Bing weighed him weekly like livestock, then beat him with a special belt studded with metal if he'd gained so much as a pound. The physical abuse was matched by emotional warfare. Gary described his father as cold and distant, withholding affection while delivering constant criticism. Most disturbing was Gary's claim that Bing used a custom-made whip of leather and metal to beat his sons for infractions as minor as leaving a light on. What made these allegations so shocking was the complete contradiction with Crosby's public image. On screen and radio, he projected easygoing paternal warmth. His road movies with Bob Hope showcased a likable, gentle personality. His Christmas specials presented heartwarming family scenes. The man Gary described bore no resemblance to the Bing Crosby that America thought it knew. After Gary's book appeared, the family split into warring camps. Bing's second family, his wife Catherine and their 3 children, vehemently denied the allegations. But significantly, 2 of Gary's brothers, Philip and Dennis, publicly supported his account, confirming their father had indeed been physically abusive throughout their childhoods. The 4th brother, Lindsay, never directly confirmed the abuse allegations, but struggled throughout his life with depression and alcoholism, eventually dying by suicide in 1989. Dennis would also later die by suicide. These tragic outcomes lent grim credibility to claims that something had been deeply wrong in the Crosby household. Bing Crosby died in 1977, never having to publicly address these allegations. But the controversy permanently tarnished his legacy, raising disturbing questions about the man whose voice had become synonymous with Christmas warmth and cheer. The voice may have been velvet, but according to his sons, the hand was something else entirely. Bing Crosby's story represents one of Hollywood's most jarring disconnects between public persona and private behavior, a reminder that the most soothing voices can mask the most disturbing secrets.
It's a good show, obviously. I mean, it's very popular all over the world, so why not?
7. Rock Hudson's family knew he was gay and helped hide it. When Rock Hudson became the first major celebrity to acknowledge having AIDS in 1985, the public was stunned to learn that Hollywood's quintessential leading man was gay. But the real bombshell wasn't Hudson's sexuality. It was the decades-long conspiracy of silence that had protected his secret, orchestrated by dozens of people, including members of his own family. From the moment he arrived in Hollywood, Rock Hudson, born Roy Harold Scherer Jr., was systematically transformed into the studio's ideal of masculine appeal. Standing 6 feet 5 inches with chiseled features and easy charm, he was packaged and sold as the dream romantic partner for millions of American women. His films with Doris Day cemented his image as the perfect heterosexual specimen. What fans never suspected was that this entire persona was an elaborate fiction, maintained by an extensive network that included Hudson's own mother. Rather than rejecting her son's sexuality, Katherine Hudson became an active participant in protecting his secret. She attended events as his date, helped screen potential publicity companions, and maintained the fiction of her son's heterosexuality in every public statement. His agent, Henry Wilson, himself a closeted gay man, crafted Hudson's false identity with ruthless efficiency. He arranged staged dates with women, coached Hudson on masculine behavior and speech patterns, and brutally squashed any rumors threatening to expose the truth. When gossip became too persistent, Wilson took the extraordinary step of arranging a marriage between Hudson and his secretary, Phyllis Gates. For years, this marriage was portrayed as a genuine romance. Only decades later did it become clear that the entire relationship had been orchestrated specifically to counter rumors about Hudson's sexuality. Gates later claimed she didn't know the marriage was a sham, though many Hollywood insiders disputed this. The most heartbreaking aspect was how Hudson had to live his entire adult life in a split reality: public heterosexual icon, private gay man. Every authentic relationship he formed with another man had to be conducted with elaborate secrecy, constantly fearing exposure that would instantly end his career. While he achieved enormous professional success, his personal life remained a carefully guarded performance, that never stopped. By the time AIDS ravaged his body in 1985, Hudson could no longer maintain the fiction. His gaunt appearance at a reunion with Doris Day shocked the public, and he soon became the reluctant face of the AIDS crisis. In death, he finally achieved the authenticity that Hollywood had denied him in life. He was living a lie, and his family helped sell it. Not out of shame, but because they understood the brutal reality. In that era, the truth would have destroyed everything he had worked for. Rock Hudson's story reveals how completely the entertainment industry forced LGBTQ performers to choose between authenticity and survival.
Treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these
8. Charlie Chaplin's mother died in an asylum. He rarely spoke of her. The Little Tramp made the world laugh with perfect physical comedy and expressive eyes. But behind Charlie Chaplin's iconic character lurked childhood pain so profound he could barely bring himself to acknowledge it, even after becoming one of the wealthiest and most powerful men in entertainment. Chaplin's mother, Hannah, had been a music hall singer of modest success until mental illness began destroying both her career and her grip on reality. When Charlie was just a child, her condition deteriorated dramatically. She experienced episodes of psychosis, sometimes not recognizing her own children, and was eventually committed to an asylum when Charlie was 14 years old. This trauma, compounded by extreme poverty that sometimes left young Charlie sleeping on London streets, shaped him in ways both obvious and subtle. Yet as he rose to become one of the world's most famous men, Chaplin maintained nearly complete public silence about his mother's fate, as though her illness was somehow shameful. In interviews, he would speak vaguely about a difficult childhood, but carefully avoided details about Hannah. The press was explicitly instructed not to ask questions about his background. Even in his autobiography, he treads carefully around the full extent of his mother's condition, offering only glimpses of the devastation it caused him. While Chaplin financially provided for his mother's care in private institutions for the remainder of her life, he visited her infrequently. This wasn't coldness. Biographers suggest it was self-protection. Seeing his once vibrant mother reduced to her illness was simply too painful for him to bear regularly. What makes this story particularly poignant is how Chaplin channeled this unspoken trauma into his art. The tramp character, vulnerable yet dignified in the face of crushing hardship, can be seen as Chaplin's response to his own childhood helplessness. His films repeatedly feature themes of economic inequality and the struggle for dignity amid suffering, direct reflections of his early life with his declining mother. Hannah Chaplin remained institutionalized until her death in 1928, by which time her son had become one of the most famous and wealthy men on the planet. Yet even at the height of his power, Chaplin couldn't heal his mother's mind or escape the shadow her illness had cast over his childhood. The king of comedy came from a world of silence and shame. His laughter helped heal millions, even as his own wounds remained too painful to acknowledge publicly.
With many ideas, threw them away, started all over again. And eventually it evolved into what you see today as Disneyland. But it all started from
9. Walt Disney had a brother he cut out of the company. The name Disney conjures magical kingdoms and wholesome family entertainment. But behind the magical empire Walt Disney built lurked a complicated relationship with his older brother Roy, a partnership that mixed deep loyalty with troubling power dynamics and calculated erasure. Most Disney fans don't realize that without Roy O. Disney, there might never have been a Disney empire at all. While Walt dreamed up Mickey Mouse and Snow White, Roy figured out how to pay for it all. He raised capital, managed finances, and transformed artistic concepts into profitable enterprises. Without Roy's business acumen, Walt's creative ideas might never have made it beyond sketches on paper. For decades, they worked as partners. Walt as the public face, Roy handling finances behind the scenes. But as the Disney empire grew, so did Walt's determination to control the narrative, including systematically minimizing his brother's crucial contributions. In public appearances, Walt rarely mentioned Roy's role. In media coverage, Walt was portrayed as the sole genius behind Disney magic. Even within the company, Roy's authority was subtly undermined as Walt made unilateral decisions affecting the business Roy supposedly co-managed. The situation came to a head during the planning of Disney World. Roy had actually wanted to retire, but after Walt's death in 1966, he postponed his plans to ensure the Florida project's completion. In perhaps the most telling gesture of their complicated relationship, it was Roy who insisted the project be named Walt Disney World to honor his brother, despite Walt having systematically pushed Roy into the background throughout their career. Throughout their business relationship, Roy remained loyal to Walt, even when that loyalty wasn't reciprocated. He understood that Walt's creative vision required his financial stewardship, even if Walt rarely acknowledged this publicly. What's particularly striking is how effectively the Disney company maintained the narrative of Walt as sole visionary genius, with Roy as merely the supportive brother, when in reality, the Disney empire required both men's complementary talents. Even today, many Disney fans have no idea how essential Roy was to creating the entertainment juggernaut they love. The Magic Kingdom had a family feud behind its castle walls, a subtle power struggle between brothers who needed each other but couldn't always acknowledge that interdependence, especially when one brother was determined to claim the spotlight for himself.
Why did you reach out and get that fly that was bothering me? Why have you done that twice instead of 5 times?
10. Marlon Brando's daughter committed suicide. His son went to prison. Marlon Brando revolutionized acting with raw performances and brooding intensity. But while his professional achievements became legendary, his family life descended into tragedy so profound it read like Greek drama, complete with suicide, murder, and a father seemingly helpless to stop his children's destruction. Brando fathered at least 11 children with multiple women, creating a sprawling, chaotic family tree. But no aspect of his complicated family life proved more devastating than what happened with his first 2 children, with third wife Tarita Teripaya, daughter Cheyenne, and son Christian. Cheyenne Brando initially showed tremendous promise, beautiful, intelligent, beginning a successful modeling career. But by her early 20s, she was spiraling into severe mental illness, diagnosed with schizophrenia and struggling with substance abuse. Her deterioration accelerated after a serious car accident that required facial reconstruction and ended her modeling career. In 1990, while pregnant with her first child, Cheyenne became involved with Dag Drolet. Their relationship grew increasingly troubled, and Cheyenne told her half-brother Christian that Drolet had been physically abusive, allegations investigators later questioned. What followed was a family implosion that destroyed multiple lives. Christian Brando, fueled by cocaine and alcohol, confronted Drolet at Marlon's Los Angeles home. During the confrontation, Christian shot Drolet dead. At his trial, Christian claimed the gun discharged accidentally during a struggle, but he still pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter and received a 10-year prison sentence. Cheyenne, prevented from testifying at her brother's trial due to her mental state, spiraled further downward after giving birth to her son. Unable to care for the child, eventually raised by Drolet's parents, she attempted suicide multiple times. After several hospitalizations and failed treatment attempts, Cheyenne hanged herself at her mother's home in Tahiti in 1995. She was just 25 years old. Marlon Brando, the actor who brought such profound emotional truth to the screen, seemed utterly helpless in the face of his children's real-life tragedy. He retreated further into isolation after these catastrophes, his later years marked by reclusiveness and reported depression. The Brando legacy wasn't just haunted, it was shattered by violence, mental illness, and a family dynamic that seemed incapable of providing stability for the next generation. For all his genius in portraying tortured characters, Brando proved unable to prevent his own family from enacting a tragedy more devastating than any he portrayed on screen.
Love, but it just doesn't happen to me. It isn't that I don't believe in it, and that it's wonderful if you can really find someone that... 11.
Debbie Reynolds hid Carrie Fisher's mental illness for years. In the glittering world of Hollywood, Debbie Reynolds epitomized the perfect 1950s star, perky, talented, and seemingly indestructible even after Eddie Fisher's notorious abandonment. Her daughter, Carrie Fisher, became a cultural icon as Princess Leia. On the surface, they represented Hollywood royalty at its most resilient and glamorous. Behind their public personas, both women were fighting private battles that remained hidden for decades. Carrie struggled with bipolar disorder and addiction from a young age, conditions that would eventually become central to her public identity, but only after years of careful concealment orchestrated largely by her mother. During the height of the original Star Wars trilogy, when Carrie was becoming world famous in her early 20s, her bipolar symptoms were becoming increasingly difficult to manage. Mood swings, insomnia, and self-medication with drugs and alcohol threatened both her health and career prospects. In an era when mental illness carried even greater stigma than today, particularly in image-conscious Hollywood, these conditions posed a potentially career-ending threat. Debbie Reynolds, herself a veteran of Hollywood's brutal star system, made a calculated decision to protect her daughter the only way she knew how, by helping hide her condition from the public and even from studio executives. She covered for Carrie's absences, explained away concerning behavior as exhaustion, Hollywood's favorite euphemism, and worked tirelessly behind the scenes to ensure her daughter received treatment while maintaining the family's carefully constructed public image. It wasn't until decades later, when Carrie Fisher chose to become outspoken about her bipolar disorder and addiction struggles, that the extent of the earlier cover-up became clear. Fisher revealed in her memoirs and interviews that her mother had both supported her and sometimes enabled her, caught in the impossible position of wanting to protect her child while not always knowing how to help her heal. What makes this story particularly poignant is that both women were simultaneously managing their own personal crises while projecting confidence to the world. Reynolds was rebuilding her life and career after devastating personal betrayals, while Fisher was battling serious mental illness under the glare of international fame. They were both fighting breakdowns, in different ways. Mother and daughter, each protecting the other while smiling for the cameras, maintaining Hollywood's tradition where image trumped reality, even at substantial personal cost.
This special award. I tried many times to get it, but I didn't make it.
12. Barbara Stanwyck may have been abandoned by her family as a child. Barbara Stanwyck dominated Hollywood for decades with tough, no-nonsense performances. Her characters were survivors, women who overcame hardship through sheer determination. Few fans realized this wasn't just acting. It was Stanwyck channeling her own mysterious and traumatic childhood, a past so painful she spent her life ensuring the details remained buried. Born Ruby Stevens in Brooklyn in 1907, Stanwyck's early life reads like the setup for one of her melodramas. Her mother died when she was 4, supposedly pushed from a moving streetcar by a drunk. Just 2 weeks later, her father allegedly abandoned the family, claiming he was going to work on the Panama Canal. He was never heard from again. Ruby and her 4 siblings became instant orphans. But here's where the story gets murky. While this basic outline appears in official biographies, Stanwyck herself was remarkably evasive about details throughout her life. She rarely gave interviews about her childhood, and when she did, she offered only the barest information, often changing crucial elements between tellings. Most telling was Stanwyck's apparent destruction of records that might have verified her early years. Biographers later discovered that many documents relating to her childhood had vanished, not through random loss, but through what appeared to be deliberate removal. Stanwyck wasn't just private about her past, she actively worked to ensure it couldn't be reconstructed. After her parents' disappearance, young Ruby was shuffled between foster homes and relatives, experiencing instability and alleged abuse that she refused to detail, even to close friends. By age 14, she had dropped out of school and was supporting herself, first as a package wrapper at a department store, then as a chorus girl. Her transformation from uncertain origins to Hollywood royalty is remarkable, but equally remarkable is how successfully she controlled the narrative of her beginnings. Even today, with extensive biographical research, significant gaps remain in the story of Barbara Stanwyck's earliest years. She played strong women because she was won by necessity. The uncertainties of her past weren't just hidden from the public, they were deliberately obscured, raising questions about what additional traumas might have occurred that were too painful for even tough-as-nails Stanwyck to acknowledge.
She just was unbelievable to work with, just great, and she's a good performer, good.
13. Fred Astaire's sister was a better dancer, and he knew it. Fred Astaire glided into film history as perhaps the most elegant dancer ever captured on screen. His partnership with Ginger Rogers created movie magic that still enchants viewers decades later. But before Ginger, there was Adele, Fred's sister and original dance partner, whose talent many insiders considered superior to her famous brothers. Fred and Adele Astaire began performing together as children, touring vaudeville circuits with a dance act that gradually gained popularity. By the 1920s, they had become international stars on stage, with Adele generally receiving more enthusiastic reviews than her brother. Theater critics frequently described her as the more naturally gifted performer, more charismatic, more innovative, and more instinctively musical. In 1932, at the height of their success, Adele shocked the entertainment world by retiring to marry Lord Charles Cavendish, becoming Lady Cavendish, and stepping away from the spotlight. This left Fred to forge a solo career. which eventually led him to Hollywood and his legendary film partnerships. What remained largely hidden from the public was Fred's complex reaction to his sister's departure and the persistent rumors that he actively worked to discourage her return to performing after her first husband's death. When Adele's marriage ended tragically, with Lord Cavendish's death from alcoholism, she considered returning to dance and acting. According to close friends, Fred subtly discouraged these efforts, suggesting the industry had changed too much, or that it would be too difficult for her to make a comeback. Some industry insiders claimed Fred had grown comfortable being known as the world's greatest dancer, a title that might have been challenged if his sister had returned to performing and reminded audiences of her exceptional talent. Others suggested he genuinely believed he was protecting his sister from disappointment in a changed entertainment landscape. Adele did briefly consider a Hollywood career, but the few offers that came her way were for supporting roles rather than the star vehicles her talent warranted. Whether by coincidence or design, the industry that had embraced her brother seemed to have limited space for her. What makes this story particularly poignant is that Fred Astaire always publicly praised his sister's talent, calling her the better performer in interviews. Yet his actions behind the scenes, according to some sources, didn't always align with this generous assessment. He wasn't just the star. He protected the spotlight after years of sharing it with a sister whose natural gifts had once overshadowed his own. Fred Astaire's story reveals how even the most seemingly gracious stars sometimes worked behind the scenes to ensure their position remained unchallenged, even at the expense of family.
I hope you tried to bluff me, Mr. Roby, and then I can have the fun of telling you how clever I was.
Since I'm not 14, Grace Kelly's family tried to cancel her wedding. Grace Kelly's transformation from Hollywood actress to real-life princess seemed like the perfect fairy tale. Her 1956 marriage to Prince Rainier III of Monaco created international headlines and cemented her status as American royalty even before she acquired an actual title. But what the public didn't know was how close this fairy tale came to being canceled due to bitter opposition from Kelly's own family. The Kellys were a prominent Philadelphia family. Grace's father, Jack Kelly, was a self-made millionaire and former Olympic gold medalist who had built a successful brick business. He was also deeply proud of his Irish Catholic heritage and harbored resentment toward the European aristocracy that had historically looked down on Irish immigrants. When Grace announced her engagement to Prince Rainier, her father's initial reaction wasn't congratulations. It was condemnation. "I don't approve of my daughter marrying a foreigner," he reportedly declared. But his objections went beyond mere nationalism. There was a significant religious complication. Rainier had previously been married, and divorce was unacceptable in the Kellys' strict Catholic worldview. What the public never realized was just how close Jack Kelly came to derailing the wedding entirely. Behind closed doors, he engaged in heated arguments with Grace, questioning Rainier's motives and suggesting the prince was merely seeking the Kelly fortune and Grace's celebrity to boost Monaco's profile and finances. The situation deteriorated to the point where Kelly reportedly told his daughter, "I'm not paying for a wedding I don't approve of." No small threat, considering royal protocol, dictated that the bride's family would bear the costs, including the substantial dowry Monaco expected. What finally changed Jack Kelly's mind wasn't sentiment, but a shrewd assessment of the advantages the marriage might bring. After meeting with Prince Rainier and evaluating the situation more carefully, he recognized that his daughter would wield significant influence as Princess of Monaco, perhaps more than she could as a Hollywood actress with an inevitably limited career span. Even after his reluctant approval, tensions continued during wedding preparations. The Kelly family's working-class Irish Catholic background clashed dramatically with Monaco's aristocratic traditions. Negotiations over everything from the guest list to the dowry created friction that remained carefully hidden from the public, who saw only the glamorous ceremony and reception. Before the fairy tale, there was a family war, one that pitted Grace's American family against centuries of European aristocratic tradition, and nearly derailed one of the 20th century's most celebrated marriages. The Perfect Princess story began not with Once Upon a Time, but with a father's ultimatum and behind-the-scenes power struggles worthy of a royal court drama.
Siamo a Parigi, non a Berlino, ricordatevelo. Se mi obbligate a tradire, vado alla polizia francese e dico tutto quello che so.
15. Greta Garbo secretly supported her family through espionage earnings. Greta Garbo's famous line, "I want to be alone," took on entirely new meaning when details emerged decades after her career about her possible double life as an intelligence operative during World War II. The Swedish-born actress, known for her mesmerizing screen presence and legendary reclusiveness, may have used her international fame as cover for work far more dangerous than making movies. As war engulfed Europe, Garbo's Swedish citizenship and international celebrity status gave her unique freedom of movement between countries that were otherwise closed to travelers. According to declassified intelligence files and accounts from former operatives, Garbo used these privileges to gather information for the Allies, particularly about German sympathizers in Sweden and German activities in occupied territories. What remained completely hidden until after her death was how Garbo allegedly funneled money from these clandestine activities to support family members in Sweden who were struggling during wartime shortages. Through elaborate systems of coded bank transfers and third-party intermediaries, Garbo provided financial support to relatives while maintaining absolute secrecy about the source of the funds. Family members were simply told that the money came from Garbo's Hollywood earnings, a plausible explanation given her star status. But the timing and pattern of some transfers have led historians and intelligence experts to conclude that at least some of the money likely came from payments for intelligence work. Particularly intriguing are transfers that coincided with Garbo's unexplained absences from Hollywood and meetings with known intelligence figures. Though she claimed these European trips were for rest and relaxation, financial records suggest they may have had far more complicated purposes. The Swedish government has acknowledged that Garbo provided valuable assistance during the war years, but has never fully detailed the nature of her contributions. Similarly, American and British intelligence archives contain tantalizing references to an operative with Garbo's profile, though many relevant documents remain classified. She said she wanted to be alone, but she was hiding much more than a desire for privacy. Behind the enigmatic screen goddess was potentially a woman engaged in dangerous wartime espionage, while secretly supporting family members who never knew the true source of their financial salvation.
Well, when I'm good, I'm very good. But when I'm bad, I'm better.
16. Mae West's brother stole from her for years. Mae West sashayed through Hollywood as the original sex symbol, famous for her provocative one-liners and unapologetic sensuality. But while she projected confidence and control on screen, behind the scenes she was dealing with a painful betrayal from one of the people closest to her, her brother John. John West had been appointed by Mae to manage aspects of her considerable fortune, a position of trust that gave him access to investment accounts, property management, and various financial instruments. For years, Mae believed her finances were in capable family hands, allowing her to focus on her career without worrying about business details. The betrayal came to light in the 1950s when discrepancies in Mae's accounts triggered a more thorough investigation. What emerged was shocking. John had been systematically embezzling from his famous sister for years, siphoning off substantial sums through fake expenses, unauthorized loans, and manipulated accounting. The total amount stolen has never been precisely determined, but financial experts who later reviewed the available records estimated it might have been the equivalent of several million in today's dollars, a substantial portion of Mae's wealth despite her significant earnings. What makes this story particularly remarkable is Mae's response to the discovery. Unlike many celebrities who would have pursued prosecution and public justice, Mae chose to handle the matter privately. She removed John from his position and restructured her financial management, but she never pressed criminal charges against her brother. When asked years later by a close friend why she hadn't pursued legal action, Mae reportedly responded with a characteristically sharp but poignant remark, "Because revenge is a sucker's game, honey, and Mae West is nobody's sucker, not even for family." The betrayal wasn't widely known during Mae's lifetime. She continued to maintain a public image of complete control, never allowing the public to glimpse this painful chapter. It wasn't until after her death, when estate documents became part of the public record, that the full extent of John's actions became known. She played tough on screen, but forgave the betrayal no one else would, choosing family loyalty over public vindication, even when that loyalty hadn't been returned. For all her suggestive one-liners and sexual innuendo, Mae West's most surprising quality may have been her private capacity for forgiveness when faced with profound personal betrayal.
I'm very grateful to the Academy's Board of Directors for this happy tribute.
17. Cary Grant's daughter was banned from talking about his LSD use. Cary Grant epitomized sophisticated charm on screen, his impeccable comic timing and debonair manner making him one of Hollywood's most beloved leading men for decades. His immaculate public image gave no hint that he was among the first celebrities to embrace psychedelic therapy, undergoing approximately 100 LSD sessions under medical supervision between 1958 and 1961. In that era, before LSD became associated with counterculture and eventually criminalized, the substance was being explored as a potential breakthrough in psychiatric treatment. Grant participated in legal, controlled sessions supervised by psychiatrist Dr. Mortimer Hartman, finding the experience so transformative that he became an enthusiastic private advocate for the treatment. The therapy helped Grant process childhood trauma, including his mother's disappearance when he was 11. He was told she had died, only to discover decades later that his father had committed her to a mental institution. Grant credited these LSD sessions with helping him find inner peace after years of relationship difficulties and personal insecurities that his smooth screen persona had successfully hidden. What remained hidden from public view was the extent to which Grant controlled this narrative within his own family. His daughter, Jennifer Grant, was raised under strict instructions never to discuss her father's LSD therapy. Not with friends, not with the press, not even within certain family circles. This prohibition was maintained even as rumors about Grant's psychedelic experiences occasionally surfaced in Hollywood gossip. The concealment was so complete that Jennifer only learned the full extent of her father's experience with LSD years after his death, when she was given access to his private papers and journals. These writings revealed a man whose public image had been carefully separated from his private exploration of consciousness. Grant's concern about public revelation wasn't unfounded. As attitudes toward LSD shifted dramatically in the 1960s, knowledge of his therapeutic use could have been sensationalized or misunderstood. His career had been built on a specific type of gentlemanly image that seemed incompatible with psychedelic exploration, regardless of its legitimate therapeutic context. He reinvented his mind and hid the medicine that helped, ensuring that his legacy would be defined by his artistic achievements rather than by his psychiatric treatment, no matter how beneficial it had been to his personal growth. Cary Grant's story represents one of Hollywood's most striking contradictions: the suave, seemingly carefree leading man who privately underwent experimental psychological treatment while ensuring his own daughter couldn't speak of it.